Before the roads were paved. Before the maps were drawn. Before men gave names to the rivers and the winds, there existed a village that stood at the very edge of two worlds. The people called it Kasaka, the meeting place. To the east lay the land of the living. Warm. Loud. Filled with the laughter of children and the smell of roasting groundnuts. Where the sun was a friend and the rains were a blessing. But to the west, just beyond the great silk cotton tree, lay something else entirely. The spirit world. A place that breathed and watched and waited. The elders of Kasaka had one rule. One rule passed down from father to son, from grandmother to grandchild, written not in ink but in fear. You do not go past the silk cotton tree after dark. Not because there was nothing there. But because something was always there. Watching. There was one man in Kasaka who knew the border between both worlds better than anyone. His name was Mzee Odongo. He was so old, the children believed he had been alive since the beginning of fire. His skin was like tree bark, carved and weathered by decades of secrets. And his eyes always looked at you as if he could see something standing just behind your shoulder. Mzee Odongo was the keeper of the village laws. The guardian of the sacred boundary. And for 70 years, he had kept the peace between the living and the spirits. Until the night everything changed. Until the night a woman named Zawadi walked into the forest alone and came back carrying something more than a child. Zawadi had been married for 3 years with no child to show for it. 3 long years of prayers unanswered. 3 years of bitter medicine from healers who shook their heads and said nothing. 3 years of watching other women nurse babies while she held empty hands. So on the night of the dark moon, when the village was deep in sleep, Zawadi did what no one was supposed to do. She crossed the boundary. She walked past the great silk cotton tree, into the forest where the air was cold and thick with something invisible. And in the clearing beyond the border, she met him. A spirit. Tall as a great tree. Wrapped in silver mist. His face was kind, or at least, it wore kindness like a mask. He spoke to her in a voice like wind through tall grass. "You want a child," he said. It was not a question. "More than anything," she whispered. "Then I will give you one," he said. "But know this, woman of Kasaka. This child will carry my blood as surely as he carries yours. He will belong to both worlds, and he will choose, before the end, which world will claim him." Zawadi should have turned and run. Instead, she nodded. And the spirit smiled, and Zawadi felt her womb warm as an ember. 9 months later, Zawadi gave birth. The women who attended her birth came out of the hut walking fast. Not running, because running meant panic. But walking the way people walk when they have seen something they cannot explain. The baby was born healthy. Strong lungs. Strong cry. But his eyes were the color of a sky before lightning. A silver gray that shifted like water in moonlight. And on his left wrist, from the moment of his birth, was a marking. Not a wound, not a bruise. A pattern, like a spiral drawn by an invisible finger into his very skin. The old women whispered among themselves. Mzee Odongo came to see the child personally. He looked at him for a long time without speaking. Then he turned to Zawadi and said something she would never forget. "This child is a gift. And a burden. He is yours, but not only yours. Name him carefully." Zawadi looked at her son, this impossible, luminous boy, and she named him Amara. In the old tongue, the one who will never fade. Amara grew. And as he grew, the village of Kasaka grew uneasy. He was a beautiful child, clever, gentle, quick to laugh. His mother loved him fiercely. But the village was not his mother. Strange things happened around Amara. When he slept, the fire in the hut would turn blue. When he was sad, truly sad, the air in the room would drop cold, and you could see your own breath even in the dry season. Animals trusted him in ways that made people nervous. A cobra once coiled at his feet and slept there like a dog. The other children noticed fast, the way children always do. They stopped letting him join their games. They would fall silent when he walked past, and start whispering when he was just far enough away. Amara heard every word. He was 8 years old the first time a boy spat at his feet and called him spirit child. He was 8 years old the first time he understood that being different was not a gift the world would celebrate. He would cry at night, quietly, so his mother could not hear. And on those nights, the markings on his wrist would glow brighter, as if something on the other side of the boundary was listening. It happened on the morning of his 12th birthday. A group of older boys had cornered Amara near the river. They had been waiting for him, planned it, even, and they came with sticks and the particular cruelty that boys learn from the fear of adults. They beat him badly. Amara did not fight back. He curled into the ground and took it the way he had taught himself to do, quiet, still, invisible. But this time, something inside him refused to be quiet. The marking on his wrist blazed. His eyes flooded silver white. And from somewhere deep in his chest, from somewhere that was not quite him, a sound rose. Not a scream. Something older than a scream. The ground shook. The river behind them rose 2 feet in one heartbeat. The boys dropped their sticks and ran. Every single one of them ran, stumbling, falling, screaming, across the field and back to the village. Amara stood up slowly, shaking. His hands were glowing. He looked at them for a long time. Then he sat down on the riverbank and wept, not because he was hurt, but because he had seen their faces when they ran. And in their faces he had finally understood the truth. He was not like them. He would never be like them. And no amount of trying or hiding or shrinking himself small would ever change that. The next morning, Amara went to Mzee Odongo. The old man did not seem surprised to see him. He gestured for Amara to sit, and they looked at each other across the fire for a long while. "You know what I am," Amara said. "I have known since the night you were born," the elder replied. "I have been waiting for you to come to me. Then tell me what I must do." Mzee Odongo leaned forward. In the firelight, his eyes looked impossibly deep, like there were other fires burning far back inside them. "There is a place," he said slowly, "beyond the silk cotton tree. Deeper than any human has walked and returned from. At the very heart of the spirit forest, there is a river with no name. The elders of the elders called it the river of fast things. Where the fast water ran before there was land. If you find it, if you stand at its edge, your father will come to you. And you will make your choice." "And if I choose the human world?" Amara asked. "The spirit in you will live. You will become fully human. Normal. The markings will fade. And if I choose the spirit world?" The old man was quiet for a moment. "Then you will be the greatest spirit that world has ever seen. But you will leave this one forever. Your mother will never see you again. And Kasaka will lose the only bridge between the living and the dead that has ever walked among them." Amara swallowed. "There is a third option," he said quietly. "What if I choose both?" Mzee Odongo stared at him. Then, for the first time in Amara's memory, the old man smiled. Amara left before dawn. He told his mother he would return. He said it with the quiet certainty of someone who believed it fully, and that certainty was the greatest gift he could give her. He packed nothing but a gourd of water, a fire striker, and the cloth his mother had wrapped him in as a newborn, the only garment in the world that had touched both worlds. At the edge of the village, he paused. Behind him, the sleeping huts. The cooking fires turned to embers. The sound of the village breathing in the dark. Everything familiar. Everything that called itself home. Ahead, the silk cotton tree, ancient and enormous, its roots like frozen rivers in the earth. And beyond it, the forest. Amara touched the marking on his wrist. It pulsed warmly under his fingers, like a heartbeat that was not quite his own. He stepped forward. The forest swallowed him whole. At first it was dark in the way that forests are dark, deep shadow, broken light, the rustle of animals moving out of his way. But as he walked deeper, the darkness began to change. It became luminous. The trees grew taller. The air grew heavier with something that was not quite smell and not quite sound but something in between. Spirit light clung to the bark of ancient trees like moss. The ground beneath his feet was warm. He was no longer in the human world. He was in the space between. And something vast, something that had been watching him his entire life, finally turned its full attention toward him. The spirit world did not welcome him easily. It tested him. 3 times. The first test came as a creature made of darkness. It rose from the ground ahead of him, shapeless, terrible, smelling of old graves and forgotten names. It was the kind of fear that reaches inside your chest and squeezes. Every instinct Amara had screamed at him to run. But he remembered what Mzee Odongo had told him in a different conversation, years before, when Amara had come to him crying about the boys at the river. The old man had looked at him and said simply, "Fear is not the enemy. Fear is the forest. You can walk through a forest." Amara planted his feet and looked directly into the creature's burning eyes. "I know what you are," he said. "You are the fear I have been carrying since I was 8 years old. You are what I became when I decided I was a mistake. I am done carrying you." The creature shuddered, cracked, and fell to pieces like dry clay. The second test was a bridge of light over a chasm so deep that even sound fell into it and disappeared. On the other side stood the shimmer of something that looked like home, warmth, voices, safety. But when Amara looked back, he could see the real home. His mother's hut. The baobab tree. The village rising with morning smoke. He understood the test. The bridge wanted to know if he would abandon what he came from in exchange for what he could become. He crossed, but he crossed without forgetting. He held both images in his mind simultaneously, refusing to let either one go. And the bridge did not break. The third test was the hardest. He found a spirit creature, enormous, silver, a leopard made of moonlight, lying wounded by the side of the spirit river. Dying slowly, leaking light like a wound leaking blood. Something in Amara recognized it. Not the creature, but the wound. The particular loneliness of a thing that existed between categories. That belonged fully to neither world. He sat beside it. He placed his glowing hands on its side. He did not know what he was doing. He only knew what he felt. He poured every piece of both worlds he carried inside him, the human warmth, the spirit light, into that wound without holding anything back. The leopard breathed. Opened its silver eyes. Looked at Amara with a clear, devastating recognition of one exile meeting another. Then it rose and bowed its great head to him and walked into the forest without looking back. Amara understood. He had just shown the spirit world what he was. Not a mistake. Not a half thing. A bridge. And then he found it. The river of fast things. It was not what he had expected. He had imagined something terrifying. Something vast and unknowable. Instead it was a river that looked, somehow, like a memory. Like the first water you ever drank as a child. Like the sound of rain on a roof when you are warm inside. It flowed without rushing. It glowed without burning. And on the other side, standing in the light, was his father. Amara had imagined this moment many times. In different versions of the dream, he had raged at this spirit. Demanded answers. Wept. Accused. But standing here, at the actual edge of the actual river, all of that fell away. His father waded across. And when he stood before Amara on the human side of the water, he was smaller than Amara had imagined. Not small, but scaled to something reachable. A father, not a god. You came, the spirit said. I had to, Amara replied. It is time to choose. Amara looked at this being who was half of everything he was. He studied the face that had lived in his own mirror every day without him recognizing it. I have already chosen, Amara said. The spirit waited. I choose both, Amara said. Not because I cannot decide. But because both is what I am. Choosing one would be dying. I refuse to die for the comfort of people who don't know how to hold two true things at the same time. Silence. Then the spirit said very softly, my son. You are the first in 1,000 years to give that answer. What happened to the others? They chose one and spent the rest of their lives mourning the other. He paused. There is a reason the choice was called impossible. It was never meant to be solved. It was meant to teach you who you are by watching you try. Amara stared at his father. You already knew, he said slowly. You already knew what the right answer was. I knew what kind of person could find it, his father said. Now I know that person is you. He came home at sunrise. The village was already awake when he emerged from the tree line, as if Kasaka had spent the whole night holding its breath and now exhaled all at once. His mother saw him first. She ran. Not the way people run toward good news. The way people ran toward the thing they feared they had lost forever, full body, full heart, all caution abandoned. She crashed into him and held him with the grip of a woman who had learned the hard way what it cost to let go. Amara held her back. The marking on his wrist glowed warm gold in the morning light. Not silver cold anymore. Gold. Something had settled inside him. Something had stopped fighting. The villagers gathered, the way villagers do, at a careful distance, watching. Among them were the boys who had run from him at the river all those years ago. They were men now. And they stood with the particular shame of men who had been afraid of the wrong thing. Mzee Odongo walked to the front of the crowd. He looked at Amara for a long time. Then the oldest man in Kasaka, the man who had never bowed to anyone, lowered his head. You went between, he said. And you came back whole. I came back more whole than I left, Amara said. From that day, Amara became something Kasaka had not had in living memory. A guardian of the boundary. Not the kind who kept the worlds apart, but the kind who kept them in conversation. When a child in the village fell sick with a sickness that had no name, Amara would sit at the river and listen, and sometimes he would come back with medicine no human healer knew. When an elder died and the family was desperate to know if their loved one had passed in peace, Amara would stand at the silk cotton tree and go very still, and sometimes he would come back with words that made the family weep with relief. He never fully crossed into the spirit world again. He didn't need to. Because both worlds lived inside him. And over time, the village stopped being afraid of that. They stopped seeing his silver eyes as a warning and started seeing them as what they had always been, a lantern. The children who had once spat at his feet brought their own children to him. The women who had whispered behind his mother's back came to him when the whispers turned against them. The men who had run at the river, those same men, gave him the seat of honor at every gathering. Not because he had become powerful, but because he had become whole. And wholeness, in a village that had always been divided by fear, was the most powerful thing of all. They say in Kasaka, and in all the villages whose people remember the old stories, that every generation is given one child who is born between. Not broken. Not incomplete. Between. Born at the intersection of what was and what could be. Of the seen and the unseen. Of the world you can touch and the world that touches you. These children are not mistakes. They are messages. And if you have ever felt that you belonged nowhere, if you have ever stood at the boundary between who you were and who you are becoming, not knowing which way to step, then perhaps this story was carried across the years for you. Perhaps you are the bridge. Perhaps you were never meant to choose only one world. Perhaps both worlds have been waiting, patiently, all this time, for you to stop apologizing for containing them both. That is the story of Amara. The boy who was born between two worlds. And made both of them richer for refusing to leave either one behind. Sleep well. The ancestors are watching. And they are proud. Thank you for watching. If this story moved something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe, because every week we bring you another African story that time almost forgot. And drop a comment below, tell me which character you felt closest to. Until next time, I am your narrator, and these are the stories your grandparents told by firelight. Don't let them die.